So I am lucky enough today to be joined by Rose Callaghan. She's from Melbourne and she's a very, very funny lady. In fact, she's a professional comedian, and that seems like one of the scariest things in the world to me. But Rose, how did you get into being a comedian in the first place? Was it a lifelong dream?
I don't know. I feel like it sort of crept up on me over a while. I guess I have always been a bit of a show pony. Like to, be in the school play. Yeah, I liked to have the attention. I wish there was some better way I could say it. It's like, I like attention, and this is a way I can get attention.
Well, I'm being joined today by a lovely Rose Callaghan. She's a comedian from Melbourne and she's a fellow ADHDer. And we're here to pick her brain and hear about her wild and interesting ride with ADHD, how she got diagnosed, and how she went on to be this amazing comedian that she is. Welcome, Rose.
Yay. Hi, Angie. It's great to chat to you. I'm in Melbourne, so it's good to talk to anyone.
No.
But we're getting let out soon. So,
thank goodness.
But I've moved back to Melbourne, like bad timing, but I've only been here for 2.5 weeks. But I'm on the bandwagon of it's so hard for us here in Melbourne. My partner got here 4 days ago from Sydney, so he can...
And he's jumped on the bandwagon too?
Yeah, he can be like, this last 4 days of lockdown has been so hard. But yes, I'm here. I've lost track of what the question was. Or maybe
That's
it was just...
okay, because my brain gets your brain, because that often happens to me all the time. I'll be mid-sentence and whoops, bright and shiny. Where was I?
There it goes.
So now you got diagnosed a little later in life as well, didn't you? How old were you?
I was 32 and I'm 37 now. So the typical female ADHD experience just just went under the radar a little bit as a kid. And then in hindsight, and I'm sure it's the same for you, in hindsight, it's literally like, these are the symptoms of ADHD. These are, the feedback on my report card as a child. And they are it's like, Rose is smart, but she doesn't finish anything on time and she can't focus.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that could mean. So, yeah, it took a while, but we got there in the end. And it's really life-changing to get diagnosed with ADHD, especially for, a lot of women that get diagnosed late. Your self-esteem is taken a bit of a battering. It's not fun getting fired from jobs and having unstable relationships and not finishing things on time and falling in a heap a lot, but it's good to know why that is.
Yes. Isn't it such a revelation? I, like you, was 44 when I got diagnosed. But at that moment they told me, I just thought, that makes sense of my whole life. It was the biggest light bulb moment. So what was it that led you to even investigate in the first place?
I don't know. I think that it had it had been in my head for about 10 years, but I just didn't get around to doing anything about it, because that is a lot of administration and that's hard. Yeah, it was definitely, it had always been a thought there. In my early 20s, I had considered it. This is okay. You can edit this out if you want to, but just say if I was at a music festival, right, and I was with my friends, and just say we were having a fun time, and we took some party favors, right?
Yes, I get the picture. Yes.
Yeah, and all my friends would be like, woo, and I would be like, I'm tired and I'm going to sleep now. And my friend was like, that's weird, Rose. And I was like, that is kind of weird. So, and also there was just a lot of stuff at work and everything that was really difficult. It was definitely, and I sort of vaguely looked into it, but then it all got a bit hard and I didn't know how somebody gets diagnosed with ADHD. And then I tried again, I reckon in my late 20s. I had a psychologist and she didn't know anything about it really either.
Mm-hmm.
We did like a checklist for like a pediatric checklist, like to diagnose a kid with ADHD. She's like, all right, well, you've got children's ADHD according to this list. But then she sort of was like, she didn't really know what to do either, which is just, it's annoying. And so I think she gave me some psychiatrist names, and then they told me that I had to get, this is one of those things, all the school reports from when you're a kid, which is
too hard basket, because where do you keep those? I don't have a filing system.
Exactly. So some of these things are just like, it's like this putting up barriers of things that would be hard for somebody like me. But anyway, when I was like in my early 30s, I was dating this guy, and he was like, oh, I've got ADHD. And I was like, oh my God, I've always thought that I had ADHD. And he was like, oh yeah, I see this doctor. And so I went to the doctor, and I got diagnosed, and I came back and I was like, oh my God, I've got diagnosed with ADHD. And I was like, how did you figure out that you had ADHD? And he was like, oh, well, I was dating this girl, right? And she was like, I've got ADHD. And I was like, oh, I always thought that I had ADHD. And then went to the same doctor. And then like, even like later on, me and this guy broke up. Another person I was dating was like, oh, you've got ADHD. I always thought that I had it as well. And I sent him to the same.
It's a chain.
It's a chain.
But don't you find that's the case anyway? You tend to attract people into your life that have ADHD, now that we know that you have it, because you love to surround yourself with people that get your wavelength in some way. Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess like people that have the same energy as you, that like maybe more spontaneous, that are a bit more creative and impulsive. So yeah, that's how I got diagnosed in the end. But I mean, I think one of the things that people ask me about a lot, because I'm like the go-to, and I'm sure you are now, Angie, because people know that you have it. Every now and then you get like this message. It's like from somebody that you haven't seen in like 2 years, and they're like, hey, Angie, I heard this isn't weird. And you're like, okay,
here we go.
What you have to do, what you have to do is you go to your GP, you get a referral for a psychiatrist, make sure it's a specialist, and then they'll go through some stuff, and then eventually they will diagnose you or not, and then you go on medication. And
we just need a little recorded script to pass out every time it happens. Because I totally agree. As soon as you actually speak openly about it and make people aware of what the symptoms might be to look out for, it seems to be so common. Don't you just seem to see it every year once you know more about it?
Yeah, and then I have a bad habit of like just diagnosing people in my head. Yeah, I'm like,
sometimes I vocalize it.
Yeah, I'm like, have you, or like there was a girl I know a while ago, she contacted me and she was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, you got diagnosed with ADHD. She's like, how do you know? I'm like, oh, I just like,
I knew 10 years ago.
It was just very obvious that, you can sense it. I think I can just sense it in people. I definitely like the way that people speak, the way that, people that are always just darting between different ideas, and that their personal lives are like messy. They're like physically messy. Their space is messy. They're late for everything. They're single. Like, when I got diagnosed, I was like, I was just in a weird place in my life, like early 30s. And I think that was the catalyst when you turn 30 and you're still like living like a 23-year-old. And meanwhile, my friends are all just overtaking me. They can like cook a meal every night. They like meal prep. They like eat breakfast. Just, they clean their house on the weekend.
Yes, or they pick a day and a time that they do that and they follow through.
Yeah. Or they plan.
Yes.
Like they plan to meet up with people and do stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, why is this still And it makes you feel a lot of shame. Like I definitely felt ashamed of what I was like, my filthy room, and like my housemates just sort of like judging me. And I was a big absolute pisshead as well. I mean, I'm pregnant at the moment, so I'm not a pisshead now.
How many weeks are you?
28 today. So that's the third bit,
trimester.
Right?
Yeah. That should be celebrated. Not with a wine yet, but
no.
And did you find out what you're having? Oh, you don't need to tell us. Oh, you can.
Oh, everyone knows. I mean, God, everyone knew. I was like 12 weeks, got to wait till 12 weeks. And I was like, I just couldn't. I mean, this is the ADHD in me as well. Somebody could be like, hey, how you going? I'm like, good, I'm pregnant, okay? I'm pregnant. I was telling everybody. I couldn't help it.
That. I'm the same. And you probably opened your presents at Christmas before it was time, and we don't like to wait for anything, and we're I don't know about you, but we tend to be oversharers a little bit.
I was about to say that's one of the ways I can tell if somebody has it is it's just they're like kind of full on and they overshare stuff and they get really like, let's have a D&M right now. And I'm like, oh my God, I agree. Let's have a D&M. So that's why I'm drawn to those like people that are a little bit full on, a little bit crazy, intense, but like.
And you become really good friends really quickly.
Yes.
And then sometimes it can explode really quickly too.
Yeah.
But then you can make up again quickly.
Yeah, I feel like, definitely intense emotional connections, friendships, that sort of thing. And because I do stand-up comedy, it's like there's so many people with ADHD that do stand-up. It's crazy. There's some careers that are just like moths to a light bulb.
Yes.
Entertainers
in general.
Yep. Yeah.
Creativity.
But especially, because with ADHD, I find that I'm like an ideas person. I'm always always coming up with ideas, and then getting diagnosed, it's about trying to channel like what's an idea that's actually worth pursuing and what's just like it might be the best idea ever, but like you can't build this app today,
You have my brain.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm like, I should just get a job that's like one of those tech, so it's just like ideas, like founder.
Yes.
And people just come to me and give me money, and I'm like,
businesses.
Okay,
it's
app that organizes your bookshelf,
oh my gosh,
something.
And you can only laugh, can't you? Because I have a string of ideas, and they're usually a few a week, few new business ideas, and I'll start to act on a few. And then if I wrote down my trail of dead business ideas that are in the gutter behind me, I have to laugh, because otherwise I think you are a little bit cray-cray.
I think sometimes it's about having the idea there, and if it sticks around for long enough, knowing that it's like a good idea.
Yes.
But the thing with stand-up that's fun is that, you can have an idea for a joke, and then you can just, like, obviously stand-up's cancelled at the moment, but in the normal times you can go, wouldn't it be funny if blah, and write it down, and then you can go and do a gig that night, and you can try it out and see if people laugh or not. And if nobody laughs, you're like, okay, I guess that wasn't as funny as I thought it was. Or you can like rewrite it and try it the next night, and you're like, okay, that's how that goes. And so kind of like when you put a 1 hour show together, the traditional solo show, it's sort of like all these little bits put together, and then you can write around that. So I don't know, I guess it's an easier way to work towards like a larger goal, but in a way that really lends itself to the ADHD brain.
And I really do believe that stand-up comedy is one of the scariest jobs in the world, but I know as ADHDers we're attracted to risk-taking and that adrenaline that fires up our dopamine to get us focusing. So do you feel like that was part of being drawn to that risk-taking nature?
Yeah, I definitely would say so. Like, and that's not to say that I wasn't terrified as well. Like, I was just as terrified as anybody else would be, I reckon. But there's definitely this, little part of my brain that's like, I think especially doing things in male-dominated environments is something that I'm attracted to as well. So it makes me go like, well, that is terrifying, but I want to prove that I can do this thing.
That's so
but
good.
yeah, it's interesting because when I started stand-up, I was undiagnosed, and I got diagnosed, I don't know, like maybe 2 years into doing stand-up. So I can compare how that affected me on stage as well.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So
I
what
used
was
to
the
get,
before and the after you?
well, the before was like very skittish because like people don't realize in stand-up you like write your material, but you know, and then you do it over and over and like you change little bits, but there's room for improvising around that. And you know, some people like to go off on tangents and talk to the audience and whatever, and other people are very word perfect and they do everything exactly as they wrote it down. But yeah, so I was like, would kind of do these sets and just like go off on these crazy tangents and be like blah. And because ADHD people are very good at being in the moment and coming up with stuff very quickly. So and I remember my psychiatrist saying that to me, and he's like, oh, that's why people with ADHD are good at comedy, because they're very good off the cuff, because they're very quick thinking. Yeah. And I was like, that's a weirdly insightful bit of knowledge. And it turns out he treated a bunch of other female comedians as well. But yeah, so I'd be like, pew, pew, pew. And sometimes, like, I was so new to comedy, I would have these like electric gigs where I would just like crush, and just like, it was amazing. Awesome. And it was this like superpower, like, and then other times I would just fucking eat shit and just go off on a weird thing and I had no point, and then come back and it's just, it was too all over. I couldn't remember my sets properly.
Yeah.
It was.
Do you have cues or anything, cue sheets or anything to go by?
No, I used to write it down. This is a bit inside baseball, but I would like write it. It's a script, like I'd script out the joke and then I'd try to remember it off the script, but my brain doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It's not good at memorizing things the way you would write them down. So now if I come up with a premise for a joke, I'll just kind of have it in my head and I'll just say it as it comes out, and then I can record it and listen to it back. But the way that it naturally comes out is the like framework for the joke.
Yeah, right.
But and I just find my memories better on medication. But yeah, I'd be like about to go on stage and I'd be like going through my phone, some Google Drive document. I'm like, oh, we're in a basement. I don't have any, oh shit, I can't look up my script. And I would be like panicking. And I was always like, had this like panic energy trying to memorize. I just was like, I had a lot of panic anxiety.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't remember. And it was just like all over the shop.
So would your brain freeze sometimes, like just freeze and you'd get completely blank? I find that happens to me, but could it happen in the middle of a show?
I wouldn't go completely blank, but it ruins your performance because you're like, and then it's sort of like when you're in the playground and, you know.
See, that's funny too, though. Yeah. You can make anything funny, I'm sure.
Funny to you, not funny to anybody at the open mics. But like, the comedy, it needs to come across naturally and like conversational. So I think it would affect my performance like that. But man, before I do kind of in some ways miss the like full on adrenaline that would come from, because it's like, I think that, that dopamine seeking like thing in doing stand up, while sometimes it's bad and you feel really shit, but the high that I got was so insane. Like I remember one time I had this amazing gig and I was like full 24 hours like afterwards, I was just like, I was at some contract job that I was like obviously not doing a great job at, and I was just like sitting there. It's like if you'd had some sexy one night stand or something, you're like, and then we did that thing.
Lingering.
Then he flipped me over. That's so disgusting. I was like, and then that happened, and that was so good. And I was like, I'm the best. I feel like it did give me a some weird God
Rush.
complex or something. Yeah, it was just a rush.
That.
And then I found when I started taking medication, I was just like way more focused, and people that were like, oh, you're so much more consistent. You're better on stage. So I know that some people, they're like, I don't want to take medication. I don't want to tame the beast. But like those people are inconsistent on stage. And I look at them and I'm like, you're like what I used to be like. And there's no way I could have gotten to where I am now if I was still being like that, because I was all over the bloody shop.
I know. You've just reminded me when I was making Destination Happiness, I did series 1, series 2, series 3, and in between series 2 and series 3, I got diagnosed and treated, and people that I know well could spot the difference. Even in the in every detail of the show, I could pull it together in a way, and it was all very scattered. I mean, it came together, but there was an obvious difference. So
probably at the last minute it came together.
Oh my gosh. I think now if I did not have ADHD, there is no way I would have attempted to make the show, because I just thought, oh yeah, I can do that. Of course I can do it. And I just threw myself into it and had to take on the role of probably 10 different people. But I thought, the adrenaline of that last minute deadline could make me do anything. But now I realise
deadline.
That's if I don't have deadlines, I just flounder. Are you the same?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Like in jobs, if I'm doing, because I do stand up, but I do like a bit of freelance work doing like in ad agencies and stuff like that, like copywriting and social media stuff. And if someone's like, oh, I'm like, when do you need this by? They're like, oh, whenever it's chill. I'm like, do not ever say those words to me. Do not ever like, but it's funny because I had a boss like a year or so ago, and she didn't know anything about ADHD, but she was really nice. I did trust her. I was like, by the way, like I've got ADHD, so I do work. I kind of need deadlines, and I need this, like with this report. I'm so sorry. I know I've been getting it to you late. You just need to like, just sometimes if you lie to me and say it was due, you need it a day earlier than you actually do, like that would be really
smart.
Good. And she was like, Rose, that is what I've been doing. And I was like, oh my God, wow. I was like, okay, you're a really good manager because you figured that out about me. And I think that's literally like what is missing with just like some accommodations for neurodiverse people in the workplace. It's not much. It's just things have been set up for other kinds of people. And if all a manager knows is like they need to lie to me and say that things are due earlier, and not just like walk up and give me like they just need to put things in writing and I'll do
put
them.
It in your visual field. That's what I'm learning about at the moment, is you need to see stuff that needs to be done in your to-do list, and it needs to be out of your head and in front of you to remind you. Do you find that too?
Yeah, I tend to like have a digital, like I like to use like project management tools to organize, to organize like all the tasks that I have. And it's just crazy like how much more I'm able to achieve just with medication, but like knowing I have ADHD and then just like figuring out ways to deal with that. Because like, you know, people are very scared of medication, but and it's that's the thing that really shits me, just how stigmatized medication is. And the media has totally like been selling this like kids are on speed and they're all like
so ridiculous. because and that's when I tried it for the first time too. I thought, oh, I'm just going to do this as an experiment. I'm not going to be taking medication long term. It's just if they give it to kids, I want to know what it feels like, because kids can't say what they really think. And then, you know, my 3-week experiment just turned into being, wow, this stuff is so
like,
life-changing.
oh,
hallelujah. Yeah. So what I was going to ask you about too, when you would have, I'm flipping back conversations, but you're totally fine with that, is when you would have those moments on stage where it wasn't going well. One of the big things for me with ADHD is rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Yes.
Do you find that any criticism, did you find that just absolutely crushing?
Yeah, absolutely. When I read about rejection sensitivity dysphoria, I was like, oh my God, like that's crazy. But, you know, for anyone that's watching this, it's basically like a symptom of ADHD. It's not a, I guess, illness in itself, but it's just basically we feel rejection really, really, really hard, and it hurts us to our core. And I think like being emotionally sensitive is one of the big things that people don't realize about ADHD. And I've always been a very when I was in school, they're like, Rose is very sensitive, like, which means she cries all the time. Yeah. I think the girls with ADHD are like the sensitive ones, but that rejection. Yeah. And also rejection, I mean, with stand-up, it's like a pretty brutal industry. So it's not just, you know, but like having a bad gig what goes up must come down, you know? So if I was feeling like euphoric for a day when I had a good gig, you can also like just feel absolutely horrible after a bad gig. And then it's not just that, it's like, there's so many tiny ways you can get rejected doing stand-up. It's like, why do I do stand-up? It's like so bad for your mental health. But, you know, like you ask for a gig and somebody doesn't reply to your Facebook chat message. And like, I was just getting really paranoid. I just had a lot of paranoid anxiety. I was like, they hate me. There was a lot of, they hate me. This person hates me. Just taking everything like really, really personally. And I was like in a really, like I was subjectively doing like pretty well for a new comedian. But I just remember this comedy festival when I was like a year in, and I got all these like really great opportunities, but I was a mess. Like I couldn't concentrate on anything for like 2 seconds. Like I was full of adrenaline, but I was questioning everything. So I'd finish a show. This is pre-diagnosis, yes. So, you know, I had a show that was like pretty early in the night, and I'd finish a show and all my friends would be there, and I'd be like, oh, hey. And like the pub that I had the gig at was like really busy, and everybody would come up and be like, oh, that was good. Do you want a drink? What are you doing? And then I'd be like, oh, I want to go, what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to go to another show. And comedy festivals like really hectic. I've got another spot that I've got to go and do here. I've got this thing. Wait, oh, this person, I got this opportunity. That's amazing. Oh, my other friend's like, you know, he doesn't want to hang out with me. What's the deal with that? Why didn't I get this? Everybody hates me. And I got like I got a really bad review, like, and that it like absolutely killed me. And I realized that I couldn't read reviews, like just generally, because I mean, it's basically like a totally random person who you didn't get to pick is just like judging what your comedy is like. So it's not a good measure of like, I mean, in what other thing, just say you're an accountant, would you be like, I'm just going to walk down the street and go, you like random person, can you come and judge if I'm a good accountant or not? You would trust your manager to, you know, say that. But yeah, I just couldn't handle the negative feedback.
And that's,
at all.
You know, some people would say, why do we, you know, I guess we're in both in entertainment in some ways, and
Yeah.
people would think, well, why would you put yourself out there if you're so sensitive? But you can't help.
Because I would get bored.
Yes.
I would get bored otherwise.
We need a scary job. We can't sit in an office. We need to be at risk of something. Like, I've had the same sort of thing, and it crushes me. And people could say a billion great things, and you only hone in on that one little nasty.
Exactly.
So,
and all the other things is just like, but like they're just saying that because they're my friend, or
they don't really mean it.
Blah. Yeah. And you discount all of that, and then that like one little thing, you're like, why don't they like me?
I totally get it. Well, with your ADHD along the way, did you ever end up in a heap with and you don't have to answer anything, of course, I'm putting you on the spot here, with depression or an anxiety disorder because of it?
Yeah, I definitely went through a period, like not long before I got diagnosed, I guess. Oh, actually around when I turned 30. And it was just a matter of everything happening at once, and including sort of like some job insecurity. And that was when I really started to feel like I just couldn't get anything done, and I couldn't pull myself out of this hole. And because I basically, like, I had a really good job in radio for like 4 years, and then I did all the cool stuff I could in that and got a bit bored, and then went overseas and went to London, but like during the global financial crisis. Great idea. But like came back, and like my relationship kind of fell apart, and I had this other job that I got bullied at, and it was it didn't work out, but I couldn't see that I had been, like, it was just sort of circumstantially not great. But I also can't handle rejection at work, and I always take it personally. I always assume that it's my fault. And I mean, of course, there's personal responsibility in everything like that. Like, things aren't black and white, but that, so when I stopped working there, and then I was trying to pivot into like, so I'd worked in entertainment and stuff a lot. And then I did like website stuff and social media. So I wanted to do more like government or, in different industries, but like it was really difficult. People just go, oh, you worked in the music industry. Why would you want to do this? I'm like, money. But you can't say that in a job interview, apparently. Money and job stability. That's why. But I just I was really struggling to get like a permanent job, and like just the job application process, it's hard for everybody, but it just kept going on and on and on and on, and it was just really hard. And then I was just like going out a lot, and I was just like really depressed. Like, one of my best friends died, and it just was this like, shitstorm of things going wrong.
Spiraling.
And I was spiraling, and I was just actually really depressed. And I think people with ADHD, as much as we hate routine, we crave it, and we need it.
We need it. Yes.
We absolutely need it. And I know how important that is for me now. So not having the thing of having to get up at 7 a.m. and go to a job, it's really, really, really hard to push yourself when you don't have that. And when you're trying over and over and you're not really succeeding, I really struggled with that. And then, I definitely had a lot of anxiety that I didn't realize was anxiety until I took the medication, and it was like,
and it disappeared. Did it disappear for you too? Nobody told me that was a side effect of the medication, that my generalized anxiety would go away. It was the best thing ever.
So that's so that's so funny that it happened to you as well, because I don't think that's like super common, but like definitely with certain types of anxiety, like especially like with gigs and stuff, I didn't realize how I was like just going around in this like nervous energy bubble. It was sort of like, you know, when they have like posters about like anxiety, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's not what I have. Like it just, whatever those posters are that were on the back of toilet doors. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I guess I don't have anxiety. Because also if you actually have anxiety, when it's, you might be like, oh, people with anxiety think they're a piece of shit when they're not really. But it's like, but I actually am a piece of shit. So it's like, you know, it's like, how are you supposed to know the difference? But I also, just had that like fight or flight anxiety a lot because my brain was like, refused to plan anything or think or focus. The executive function just didn't work.
Doesn't work. Can you explain to people what that executive function does for those that may not know?
Well, I mean, I guess it's just like it's like the part of your brain that's like processing, like that's like memory, like short-term memory, time management and planning things and like not being impulsive and just like being crazy like that. Yeah, like time management for ADHD people, they say it's like there's two types of time, now and not now. Basically. And my short-term memory is like shit. It's like you can't.
That's standard, isn't it?
Yeah. My partner's always going to me, I don't know why he does this. He's like, hey, can you remind me when we get home to buy beans or something? And I'm like,
no.
I'm just like, sure. And it's just like, when have I, like, not one time have I ever remembered the thing that you
tell me to remind me. Have you started using? No, you go. Sorry.
Well, because we're walking down the street and I'm not like at my computer. It's just a funny thing to say.
That he keeps trying just in case one of these magical days you'll.
Yeah, because he's the organised one in our relationship who remembers things and like makes sure that like the electricity doesn't get cut off. But he still will be like, remind me about this thing. Do you have one of them as well?
No, unfortunately, my husband doesn't do anything to do with the bills or the accounting or anything, and I'm terrible at it. So what hope do we have?
You got to get one. You got to get one of these organised.
One of the organised.
Get a chip for his brain or something.
I tell you what's great though, when you were saying that, you know, someone just taught me this recently. That's why I'm excited to tell Siri, hey, remind me at 9 a.m. in the morning to buy beans. And she just reminds you. I didn't know you could do it that easily.
See, that's what my partner does, but I have like an Android and the Google Assistant, it just doesn't work like that. Like I've tried. Yeah, I'm like, what the hell? I also have a tendency to, I'm always trying to like streamline and like become the most organized, whatever. Yes. So I love technology and new technology, but I'm always like, I tend to like come up with a system and I'm like, and then I just stop using the system. I don't know why, I just forget. And then 2 months later, I'm like, wait, what's that new app? Oh, cool. And then I download that app and I try to use that for a bit. And then I'm like, why am I using this app? And then I'm like, I had a good system like 4 months ago. What happened to that?
And when you get that new system, you think, yes, this is it. This is the answer to my organisation. And you are completely convinced that this time it's going to work, right?
But even though it does work, I think it's just, you just forget. I think that probably the most effective way for me, there's Trello. Do you know Trello?
No, I do not.
That's like an app.
I'm writing it down.
It's basically just like, I guess it uses like, I think that agile methodology, that's like a digital project management idea. Mm-hmm. And I do some work in like digital stuff. Like if you're making a website, you know, your team uses some form of agile to break the project down into smaller chunks.
That sounds great.
Yeah. But so Trello is basically like, probably based on this thing called Kanban, Kanban, and it's basically like lists and boards of things. So, and it's kind of intuitive, like you can use it the way that you want to. So I'll split, like, just say I've got this thing, and then there's like a what do they call it? Like anyway, it's just like kind of like a list with little items in it, and I'll call that like comedy stuff, and it would be like finished script for that, blah blah blah. And in each little item you can click into it and you could create like a list within that if you wanted to. So when shit's getting too much, I'll be like, okay, one of these sections is like bills, and I'll put all my bill stuff in there. And sometimes I'll just really write things down in the most basic, like step-by-step thing. Because when I get overwhelmed, I'm like, like I literally need to know, like, do I call the person first, or do I look up the website first? Like, because I'm pregnant at the moment.
Oh, double whammy.
Oh my, it's like you know, I really appreciate our healthcare system. Thank God we don't have to pay for everything. Like I like this, I mean, being pregnant and I'm just in the public system, like I really haven't paid for shit, which is awesome. But like the admin of these hospitals, it leaves a lot to be desired.
That is terrifying.
And it's like really triggering for me, because I spend so much time trying to not fuck up shit like this. It's like so much, it requires so much focus and energy for me to be like, hang on, I'm putting the appointment in. Wait, so you said I have to get the blood test before the appointment. Okay, no. How long will it take for okay, so I have to get a blood test a week before that. So I need a referral for the, okay, so I have to go to the doctor and get a referral, and then I get the blood, like that kind of shit. And then they just, and then they don't send me when any of my appointments are. And it's like,
hey, just you wait till you have your child in school and you start getting newsletters, and you've got to know stuff for them too as well as yourself. Newsletters, you can't take it in. You've got to get a very good friend that doesn't have ADHD from school, a school mum that is patient to remind you of stuff, because you don't know.
No, my partner can. The problem with the medical stuff is that they send it all to me. And I'll like, if on the odd occasion they actually send an email, which is like a form of correspondence that I can deal with and make sense. They'll send it to me, and I'll reply back and CC my partner, and then they'll just reply to me, and I'm like, CC Nick, and they just, it's so hard to have. They don't get
it.
Yeah, I'm like,
maybe we need a big ADHD sign. Can you please direct all correspondence? I have ADHD.
But it's also just like, we're both having a freaking baby.
Yes, it's half his job.
Why is this all of my responsibility? And also, this is so much. The other interesting thing, while we're on the topic of babies, is something I find really disturbing is, because I'm still taking my medication. There's this notion that's a myth of like, you have to stop taking your medication when you're pregnant.
I didn't know either way with that, so that's good to know.
Yeah, so I looked into it a lot, because I was really like, this is a deal breaker. Like if I am expected to go off my medication, like the idea of just not taking medication, it's like, I don't want to go back to being that person.
The scattered, I know what you mean.
This scattered mess, and that's, like everything's in combo. Like it's like, I have these systems and I see a psychologist, but the medication is the thing that, the backbone of everything. But so, you know, I asked my psychiatrist, and I would say to anyone, just like, if you're want to get diagnosed or treated, just see a psychiatrist that's a specialist in ADHD.
So important, isn't it? Because I was astounded when I started to look into all of this, that how many experts that you would presume would know all about it, like psychologists and doctors, they just don't know, and some can be very quick to dismiss it. So you've got to hunt down that specialist in adult ADHD, not not even a
Yes.
child one, but yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some
And
great ones.
there's plenty out there. And if you go on the, what is it? The Royal, whatever, the psychiatrist, the Royal Australian New Zealand Psychiatrists Association, whatever website, you can search and your city and like people that specialize in ADHD, and also on, I think, Health Engine, you can look up psychologists that specialize in ADHD, but a psychiatrist that's specializing in it, that's, I think, really important.
Can you go straight to the psych, or do you have to, because I know I went to a specialist GP who specialised in adults, but can you go directly to the psych? Do you know, with a referral from your standard GP, or do you need that interview?
No, I went to a specialist GP as well, and that was so not a necessary step, but for some reason, it's like you can just go to a regular GP and be like, I think I, have these symptoms. I want to look into that, and you need to get a referral to a psychiatrist. But like, if it's like, I think a local GP would just go, oh, well, this is a local psychiatrist who I know. And without having anyone on hand, they would just refer you to that random person.
Yeah.
So it's worth looking it up
in advance.
first.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then they will refer you to the psychiatrist. Then you can go and see the psychiatrist, and they'll, go through the checklists and all that stuff. And then, theoretically, if you get diagnosed, it seems to depend. Like sometimes in groups and stuff, I'm in on Facebook, people are like, oh yeah, and then I just went to the psychiatrist and they gave me a script on the first meeting, and I'm like, oh, that's not what happened with me. I had to do heaps of like surveys and all this stuff, but maybe they did them before the first appointment.
And I found the diagnosis process really interesting, because I didn't know, where they'd take it, but once you see the pattern of how they look at your childhood and how they look at your schooling and how they look at how often you flipped jobs as an adult and your relationships that were broken and when you went off the rails and did all the bad things in your teens or 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you see it all laid out, you think, oh, there's such a pattern to all this.
When you go with as soon as you look at that checklist and you're like, yes, it's like, do you tend to like drink a lot or gamble or whatever? Yeah. Do you have trouble in like relationships? Do you have trouble, like, do you talk a lot? And do you find that you interrupt people a lot? I'm like, yes. I remember someone saying after I took medication, she's like, yeah, you're a lot less annoying now. And I'm like, thank you so much.
Oh, like, that's honesty.
I was like, honestly, thank you for, because I know that you're being honest, and because it is annoying to have someone that interrupts you all the time and can't wait their turn in conversation. But going back to the pregnancy thing, my psychiatrist was like, he's like, the latest studies, number one, the health of the mother is considered more, and everything has pluses and minuses. So it's also, they consider it very important for a mother's mental health to be like not put at risk. So going off antidepressants, anti-anxiety, stimulant medication for ADHD is not going to be good for that. But also some of the studies, like there was a study at University of Sydney, where they basically looked at stimulant use with women that had given birth, because I guess some of the studies have found that like women had that with ADHD tend to have like slightly lower birth weight of their babies. They were more likely to like give birth earlier, and just a few little things like that. And so they were like, oh, it's the stimulant medication. But then they looked at women who had ADHD and, like women like you that were diagnosed later. Like some people would have been diagnosed after they had children. And so they obviously weren't on medication when they had the kids. So they were able to compare women with ADHD and women that had taken the medication and not when they had kids. And the thing that they had in common was it was the factor of having ADHD that was causing it. It wasn't the medication.
Interesting.
So frustrating when not enough research is done into stuff. And I'm just finding being pregnant, there's so much stuff that's like, you can't eat this. And it's like, why?
I know.
It's like, because one time 200 years ago, one lady ate an egg and then like she got sick from it.
I know. There's too much information everywhere at the moment, isn't there? And not enough, clear. You can't work out what to believe and what to ignore. So,
but from the experts though, and I think there's a service called Mother Safe in New South Wales where you can call up and ask about medication, and there's similar ones with different hospitals in different states. But the people that are experts in this are like, it's okay to take your medication. And I still see in all these groups, all these women going, I'm off my medication. Does anybody have any tips? And it's like, no, like, I don't even know. Like, even at the start of my pregnancy, I felt like I was so tired and I felt like I was unmedicated because of my brain was just, I guess it was like baby brain or whatever. And that's with taking medication. Especially people that have kids already and they've got kids already, they're pregnant and then they're stopping their medication. It's just dangerous. And it also, it increases the risk of postnatal depression as well.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So that's the end of my rant about medication.
I love it. No, that's a real eye-opener because I wouldn't have even thought about that or known about it. So that's great for people to hear about. So, yeah. Now, obviously, we could talk forever because we've got a lot in common around this topic. Yeah. But if you were to give some takeaways, if someone's thinking about getting diagnosed, what would you say? You know, they might be scared of getting a label, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think that some people are scared of getting a label, but then there's other people that are scared of not getting diagnosed. So they're scared. They've read, like, especially women, they're like, oh, this might be what everything is. And they're looking into it, but they're like, what if I go to the psychiatrist and they say that I don't have ADHD and that's just going to compound all of the negative thoughts that I've ever had about myself, in that I actually am shit, I'm useless, I'm da-da-da-da. And I would just say, like, if you're going to see a psychiatrist, like if you know that you have mental health issues that aren't being addressed properly, you should see a psychiatrist anyway, because they're the experts in mental health disorders, and like they're the only people that can diagnose ADHD. But even if it wasn't ADHD, you've got an instinct that there's something that is different about you that is causing, you're trying to do things the way that normal people are and they're not working out for you. So even if you don't have ADHD, they should be able to help provide some clarity on what's going on with your brain. So I wouldn't be scared.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've never considered people being disappointed about not getting a result, but
it's just something I've heard people say recently, because I did think it was, the label, but it's like, it's all about understanding the way that our own brains work, and whatever it is that each individual has. For me, part of it is just understanding why my specific brain works in a certain way. I'd also say that, it's really worth pushing past all of the barriers that might get thrown up in your journey to try and get diagnosed. Like, the cost, it's expensive, but it's worth it, like it's really worth it. Like, they might say there's a 2-month wait to see a psychiatrist. You've just got to grin and
Stick
bear
with
it.
it.
And just grit your teeth and just throw everything that you can at trying to like remember the appointments and just follow through on all the shit that you have to do because the payoff is amazing.
Oh,
life-changing.
It is so
really
life-changing. And I get goosebumps when you say that because I can't stress enough. And I think that's why I get so passionate about just let's talk about it more freely because until you know, you don't know. And it was just a casual conversation. Someone said to me once about, oh yeah, I think I've got that. And these are the checklists. And I thought, wow, that sounds like me. So one person speaking openly can lead to this life-changing event. So I'm with you.
Also, I don't think it's not a bad thing to have ADHD. And, you know, I think it makes us special. And if somebody said to me, if you could change your life, it's not like depression or anxiety that are like things that you can develop over your life. It's generally something that's like probably genetic. And it's always been that it's like your brain just works differently, but you do have superpowers that other people don't have. And if somebody said you can go back in time and you can get a brain that doesn't have ADHD, I don't think I would choose that option. I think I would probably.
A great point. I would be the same. Like, even though we're tricky and annoying at times, I like my creative, crazy brain. And when you get that hyper focus and you find what you love, like you with comedy, it's just like you do it all day and all night. And often people really excel when they find their thing. Don't they?
I think that like there's a element of, I mean, I'm definitely high functioning, probably, I guess, I don't know, in some ways, but there's also like an element of drive that you get, this real kick up the ass when you find something that you're passionate about. That's probably can push you to achieve more than maybe like a neurotypical person can. And that's why there's like a lot of famous, successful people that do have ADHD.
Entrepreneurs, movie stars.
Richard Branson has ADHD. Justin Timberlake. There's other people.
Justin Bieber. I know I always forget too. Serena Williams, apparently.
A lot of sports people.
Inventors.
Yeah, a lot of techie entrepreneurial people. I definitely think Gary V, that guy.
Oh, hello.
ADHD. That's like
I interviewed him on the show on Destination Happiness.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and 100%. But he loves it. Like that's why he is got millions of followers because he's just.
And you also Kerwin Ray, who's like an Australian entrepreneur. I mean, he's just done a video for ADHD Awareness Month as well, talking about his journey. So he's doing some ambassador work in Australia as well. But like, he's the same. Like, you can tell with his passion that he's like super. That's that hyper focus energy.
And he chooses to be unmedicated. He's never even tried it. He uses meditation. I know. If only he'd just give it although he's so successful without it. So.
But there's also different, like there's the hyperactive and then there's the inattentive. And so like when I look at him, I'm like, he is and this is my theory, but I'm like, he seems like the pure hyperactive type that maybe they can cope without medication. But I think that if you have inattentive, like you really need medication to get stuff done.
Yeah. Hello, that's me.
But I'm not a scientist or.
No, we're not experts. We're just living, breathing,
living our
experiences.
lives.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's been really insightful. And if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
My website, rosecallaghan.com. I've also got a podcast. It's about The Bachelor. I recap The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and I have guests on. I have like comedians on or people that write about The Bachelor.
I love it. I haven't heard this yet.
Oh yeah. And also like I have some reality TV people. There's also like a Bachelor person that I was talking to this week that has ADHD. That might come on the podcast. It'd be exciting, but I better not say anything in case it doesn't happen. But that's called Friendship Rose Podcast.
Friendship Rose Podcast with Rose Callaghan.
Rose Callaghan.
Callaghan's got a G. doesn't it?
GH, yeah.
CALLAGHAN.
AGHAN.
Yeah.
And I'm on a billion social media platforms, so
Of course you are.
I'm trying to update them all at the same time.
So, and they can check out your comedy on YouTube and through your website, can't they?
Yeah, I've a little bit of stuff about ADHD on there. So, yeah, check
There's
that
some
out.
great comedy routines waiting to happen through ADHD, that's for sure.
Well, I reckon that's all of the dumb decisions I made with me. It was a natural progression of telling those stories through stand-up.
That's brilliant. And you're also an ambassador for ADHD Australia. So if people want more info, they can go there as well for info.
Check out the ADHD Australia website. They've just released this new report, the Under the Radar report. And it's just they're speaking to people with lived experience of ADHD about what they're struggling with at the moment, and to try and shed more light on that, like the financial cost and what the difficulties that people have in the workplace and the access to sort of getting help and that sort of thing. Yeah. So, you can check that out on the website as well, adhdaustralia.org.au.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rose. And we'll look forward to seeing you hopefully live on stage very soon when you bust out of that Melbourne bubble.
Can't wait.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye.